Richard Kenneth Djerf, the murderer of a family, will pay the price for his killing spree today. In the state of Arizona, the time has come for the final shadow to fall on a man whose actions 3 decades ago plunged a family and an entire community into a nightmare from which they have never truly awakened. His crime? A cruel, atrocious, and depraved carnage. Richard Kenneth Djerf, 55, had pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder in the killings of Albert Luna Sr., his wife Patricia, and their 18-year-old daughter Rochelle and 5-year-old son Damien on September 14, 1993. A judge later sentenced Djerf to death. Inmate Richard Kenneth Djerf, scheduled execution by lethal injection, will be Friday, October 17, 2025, at 10 a.m. at University of Arizona Rehabilitation Center, ASPC Florence. Djerf's execution by lethal injection. It would be Arizona's 2nd use of the death penalty this year. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. The crime: Richard Djerf and Albert Luna Jr. met and became friends while working as night custodians at a Safeway supermarket. In January 1993, Luna entered Richard Djerf's apartment without his permission and stole several items, including a television, a VCR, a stereo, a car alarm, and an AK-47 assault rifle. Although Richard Djerf told Glendale police that he suspected Luna of committing the crime, the police took no action. The matter dragged on for several months until Richard Djerf, still angry about the robbery and frustrated by police inaction, decided to take revenge. Late in the morning of September 14, 1993, Richard Djerf went to the Luna family home, taking his 9mm Beretta pistol, a knife, latex gloves, handcuffs, a red wick cord, and artificial flowers in a vase to use as a ruse to gain entry. When Luna's mother, Patricia, opened the door to receive the flowers, Richard Djerf forced his way into the house, showing her his gun. Richard Djerf took Patricia to the master bedroom and tied her up, allowing her 5-year-old son, Damien, to run free. Later, while holding Damien hostage, Richard Djerf freed Patricia and forced her to load her belongings into the Luna family car, including 2 VCRs, a telephone, a caller ID card, a stereo CD player, 4 watches, loose change, and a money clip containing food stamps. He then took Patricia and Damien into the kitchen and bound them to chairs with rope and black electrical tape. More than once, he asked Patricia whether she or her son should die first. He also asked her if she knew the whereabouts of her son, Albert Jr., around 3 p.m. Rochelle, Patricia's daughter, age 18, came home. Richard Djerf took Rochelle to her bedroom, gagged her with tissue paper and duct tape, tied her wrists to the bed, cut her clothes with a knife, and raped her. Djerf then stabbed Rochelle 4 times in the chest and slit her throat, severing the jugular vein. 2 of the chest wounds and the wound to her throat were life-threatening. Rochelle further suffered multiple shallow knife wounds to the back of her head while she was alive, and 1, probably post-mortem, superficial stab wound to her right temple. Her earring had been torn through the earlobe. At some point while still alive, Rochelle vomited behind the gag and aspirated the vomit. Djerf then told Patricia he had raped and killed her daughter. Around 4 p.m., Albert Luna came home from work. Richard Djerf handcuffed him, forced him to crawl into the master bedroom, and placed him face down on the bed. He struck Albert in the back of the head multiple times with an aluminum baseball bat, inflicting 3 large lacerations and spattering blood throughout the room. The medical examiner testified that hemorrhaging from these wounds was potentially fatal. Richard Djerf removed Albert's handcuffs, bound his hands and wrists with duct tape, and left him for dead. He then walked into the kitchen and told Patricia he had killed her husband. Richard Djerf then attempted to break Damien's neck by twisting his head sharply from behind, like he had seen in the movies. In fact, he turned Damien's head all the way around and nothing happened, so he freed the child's head. In an attempt to electrocute Damien, defendant cut an electrical cord from a lamp in the kitchen, stripped the insulation from the wires, and taped it to the skin on Damien's calf. The cord was found unplugged at the scene. Albert, although badly injured, freed himself from the tape around his wrists, went to the kitchen, and charged defendant with a pocket knife, wounding him seriously. During the struggle, Richard Djerf stabbed Albert so hard that he drove a knife through Albert's right arm and into his torso. Richard Djerf managed to pull the Beretta from his belt and shot Albert 6 times. Albert fell at the feet of his wife and son. Richard Djerf asked Patricia, "Do you want to watch your son die, or do you want your son to watch you die?" Djerf then shot Patricia and Damien in the head at point-blank range. Richard Djerf splashed gasoline on the bodies and threw out the house. His girlfriend, Emily Boswell, testified that Richard Djerf told her he lit the red fuse cord but put it out when he realized there were children playing outside and he could not leave the house immediately without being seen. A short while later, he turned on 2 of the kitchen stove burners, placed an empty pizza box and a rag on the stove, and left the house. Richard Djerf then drove to his apartment in the Luna family car, with the stolen items inside, where he met Boswell around 6 p.m. He told Boswell that he had been stabbed by 2 men who tried to rob him. He later went to the hospital and was admitted. For some reason, the pizza box and rag failed to ignite the gasoline. Albert Jr. had not gone to his home the night of September 13th and did not return until 11:45 p.m. the day of the murders. September 14th, numerous unanswered calls to the house had made him anxious. When Luna entered the home and discovered the bodies of his parents and brother, he immediately left and drove to his girlfriend's house, where he called the police. The next day, September 15th, Richard Djerf disclosed to Boswell that he had murdered 4 members of the Luna family and described to her how he had done it. Richard Djerf told Boswell that the blood dripping from Patricia's gunshot wound was really awesome, and you should have been there. On September 16th, a friend, Travis Webb, checked Richard Djerf out of the hospital, but Richard Djerf was unwilling to go to his own apartment. Webb rented a motel room, where Richard Djerf stayed until September 18th. Also, on September 16th, Richard Djerf called another friend, Daniel Greenwood, in California, and once again revealed his role in the 4 murders. While in the motel room, Richard Djerf also told Webb of his involvement in the murders at the Luna home. On September 18th, Phoenix police executed search warrants on Richard Djerf's motel room, car, and apartment. The police found handcuffs, a 9mm Beretta, a stereo CD player, 2 VCR units, a U.S. West caller ID unit, artificial flowers and a vase, watches, Rochelle's charm necklace, a cardboard knife sheath, Patricia's car keys, a telephone, loose change, food stamps, and a red fuse cord. Police arrested Richard Djerf the same day. At the time of arrest, the police found a handcuff key and a newspaper section containing an article about the killings in his possession. While being held without bond in confinement, Djerf tried committing suicide by slashing his wrists with a shank forged from electronic parts of a Halloween card he had received. Trial and sentencing. Djerf had pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder in the killings of Albert Luna, his wife Patricia, and their 18-year-old daughter, Rochelle, and 5-year-old son Damien. On September 14, 1993, Djerf admitted to the crimes and pled guilty to 4 charges of first-degree murder at trial on August 16, 1995, as part of a plea agreement, in exchange for a dismissal of all other charges. Djerf later stated he hoped his plea deal would make him less likely to be sentenced to death, despite acting Judge Michael Ryan warning him that the death penalty would have still been a likely possibility. There were 4 death sentence rulings on May 22, 1996. Djerf scoffed at the multiple death sentences, saying, "They can only kill me once. The judge who sentenced Djerf to death in 1996 said that Djerf had relished the time he spent killing the Luna family to get revenge against his friend for burglarizing his apartment. The Arizona Supreme Court rejected Djerf's appeal, and the U.S. Supreme Court has refused to hear it. The Arizona Supreme Court issued a warrant of execution in February 2002. The U.S. District Court issued a stay 1 month later. Djerf continued his appeals to the federal courts. In April 2017, the district court dismissed all of his claims, and Djerf appealed the dismissal. On July 24, 2019, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the district court's dismissal. As of April 2021, Djerf is one of the 20 Arizona death row inmates who has exhausted all appeals. Legal significance. The case is significant for multiple reasons. First, under a rule of in-law, Djerf insisted on his right to fire his legal counsel and represent himself. Djerf had to fight for the right to legally represent himself in court so that he could forego a trial and enter a guilty plea. His case is often cited as a self-representation case where it is not in the client's best interest to represent themselves as long as the person can prove competency. Background. In a circulated handwritten note, Richard Djerf reiterated that he would not ask the state board for clemency. "If I find no reason to spare my life, what reason would anyone else have?" he wrote. "I hope my death brings some peace."